Hello, health fans. This is Dr. J again. I'm going to talk a little bit today on this episode specifically about singing and what that can do for your body. The cool thing about singing is we know that it can have a tremendous array of health benefits. Now, from a Christian perspective, we're called to do some worship in song, and that's all over the scripture. So that's pretty standard. That's pretty straightforward. Get a chance to do that when we go to church, then obviously I'd encourage you to do that more often. But singing from a biological perspective stimulates something called your vagus nerve. And your vagus nerve is part of what's called your parasympathetic nervous system, which is about half of the nervous system. There's the sympathetic, not to be confused with being sympathetic with somebody. That's completely a different thing. But there's your sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight. And this is your parasympathetic nervous system is kind of your rest and digest, recover, and heal. And so that aspect, your parasympathetic nerve system, one of the big components of that is your vagus nerve, VAGUS, not Las Vegas, but VAGUS. And if you look that one up, you'll see how it connects to virtually everything in your abdominal cavity. Okay, and so it's a hugely important section to be functioning correctly, to be stimulated, for you to be able to relax, to be able to create the right endorphins, for you to be able to rest, digest, and heal. And so a cool thing is that singing will stimulate the vagus nerve and release a really neat neurotransmitter called GABA. That's GABA. That's gamma aminobutyric acid. So that GABA is the calming, the resting, the relaxing neurotransmitter. And many people who struggle with anxiety suffer from a relationship to the GABA. In fact, there are various anti-anxiety medications that act chemically around that whole idea. So my thoughts are, hey, let's get this system working correctly and make sure that the nerve system is not interfered with in its ability to communicate, make sure it's not deficient in those particular nutrients, and make sure that we do everything that we can in our life and lifestyle to stimulate it. So singing is a great way to do that. Sing, hum, that vibration creates a tremendous benefit and release of this GABA. And a cool thing about this GABA, researchers have done some finding on this whole concept. When you look at from a nervous system perspective, this can also be stimulated in a really neat way by motion, by movement, and by chiropractic. In fact, there's what they call a descending inhibitory pathway from your brain, and what happens with movement perception into the body, like through chiropractic adjustment, then it releases a tremendous amount of GABA, and so the vagus nerve stimulation through singing can also help to stimulate this one. But that's, of course, assuming that the communication through the vagus nerve and back and forth is actually functional. So cool stuff. Sing like crazy. I'll give you just a little bit of a window into what the nervous system does, because ultimately that becomes the prime thing. We all kind of understand that the brain controls every function of your body, which is why in chiropractic we take a look at making sure that the bones are where they should be, to make sure that there's no interference in that, in the messages going back and forth, and making sure that every bone moves so that mechanoreceptive movement input gets into the brain so that it can communicate downward, and so these other things can continue to happen like they should. And so if you got any questions on that, feel free to message and go through it. But a really neat thing, there's some studies done on hacking the nerve system. I printed this one out. This is done a few years ago. But they were looking at an interesting thing is that they said, I learned from that experience that the brain and nerves are responsible for health. What a concept, right? What an idea. So it can actually interact with the immune system. So singing, by stimulating the vagus nerve, can actually help to influence the immune system. So fighting off colds or flus and modifying inflammation, which has a huge role to play in autoimmune situations and things like that. So an extraordinary idea, right? That inflammation in the body's tissues are directly regulated by the brain. As it says in this article, it says communication between the immune system specialist cells in our organs and bloodstream and the electrical connections of the nervous system have been considered impossible, but now apparently discovering that these two systems are intricately linked. So one of the cool things here, and I could go into lots of the vagus nerve and vagal tone and heart rate variability and some of the things that they're doing as they begin to look at this whole concept, and even the aspect of even ventricular tachycardia or things like that within the heart can be influenced by the parasympathetic nervous system's communication. So that can be there can be a problem where the vagus nerve exits from the brainstem right up at the skull and the atlas, and those the alignment of things up through here can create a bit of a pressure or things that will interfere with some of the optimal communication. If it doesn't move properly, you don't get that release of GABA. If you don't have the alignment correct, that can compress or irritate that, and then you can end up with neurogenic inflammation out in a particular area wherever the vagus nerve branch affected goes, whether that be your heart, your stomach, your whatever. And then one of the cool things is if those things are communicating well, then we just need to, in life, we just need to stimulate it, like singing. You know, what a concept, right? Have some fun, sing, do some things. And then you can have a benefit of all of the health components related to the immune system, to the resting, digesting, healing, recovery, and all those other wonderful things that you want. So sing on, my friends.